Recently, a senior official from the Japanese Prime Minister's office made a startling statement. Japan should possess nuclear weapons. A nation that built much of its moral standing on being the sole victim of nuclear weapons is now openly exploring the right to possess them. That's ironic, isn't it? Well, actually, whether Japan should or even can possess nuclear weapons isn't a matter of debate. It's a settled question, answered decades ago by binding commitments Japan made to the international community. In 1945, Japan's war of aggression ended in defeat. Japan accepted the terms of Potsdam Declaration, announced its unconditional surrender, and signed the Instrument of Surrender. These legally binding international documents were explicit. Japan shall not maintain industries that would enable her to rearm for war. Japan's own constitution reinforced this commitment. Article 9, enacted in 1947, states that the Japanese people forever renounce war, and that land, sea, and air forces, as well as other war potential, would never be maintained. In 1967, then Prime Minister Isaku Sato articulated Japan's 3 non-nuclear principles: not possessing, not producing, and not permitting the introduction of nuclear weapons into Japanese territory, a policy that has guided Japan's nuclear stance ever since. And in 1976, Japan ratified the Treaty on Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons. Under this treaty, Japan committed itself as a non-nuclear weapon state, legally bound never to receive, manufacture, acquire, or transfer nuclear weapons. So from the international treaties to domestic law, from constitutional provisions to self-declared principles, the legal framework is clear. There's no legal ambiguity, no room for interpretation. For Japan, nuclear weapons are categorically off the table. If the history after 1945 tells us why Japan cannot go nuclear, the history before it reminds us why it must not. Because in the 1930s and 1940s, Japanese militarism caused unspeakable devastation across Asia and beyond, atrocities that remind us history must never be repeated. The Nanjing Massacre, where more than 300,000 Chinese civilians and unarmed soldiers were killed in just 6 weeks. The so-called comfort women system, under which an estimated 400,000 women from China, Korea, the Philippines, Indonesia, and beyond were forced into sexual slavery, and more than 2/3 of them did not live to see the end of the war. And the list goes on and on. For decades, Japan's right-wing forces have tried to bury this history, whitewashing textbooks, denying atrocities, and recasting Japan solely as the victim of atomic bombings. But history cannot be erased. The trauma inflicted by Japanese militarism still resonates across Asia and beyond. And any move toward renewed military expansion risks being seen as a return to a deeply painful past. That is why the backlash has been so intense, and why it will not stop at words. Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Andrew Rudenko stated that Moscow is unequivocally negative toward any discussion of Japan's nuclear weapons. He warned that Japan's militarization will only worsen the situation in Northeast Asia, and in his word, will entail due countermeasures from countries who see this militarization as a threat. China condemned this remark as a blatant challenge to the post-war international order and a serious threat to regional and international peace and stability. And even Japan's closest ally, the United States, moved quickly to distance itself. Rather than endorsing the idea, a State Department spokesperson reaffirmed Japan's role as a global leader in nuclear non-proliferation and nuclear arms control, a pointed reminder of Washington's expectations. And within Japan, opposition voices were swift and vocal.
国是とも言うべき非核三原則はやっぱり厳守していくべきだと思っておりますので、早急におやめいただくということが、妥当ではないかなというふうに思います。
私たちが80年間努力してきたことにね、水を差すわけですから、本当人の気持ちを何と思ってるのかと思いますね。
Taken together, these reactions point to a fundamental truth. Japan's nuclear ambition is a non-negotiable red line. Crossing this line would trigger a series of security crises, including armed races, escalated missile deployments, and potentially even more severe military confrontations. And the stakes could not be higher. and a region ringed by nuclear powers. Nuclear armament would not protect Japan. It would put it directly in the crosshairs. It's not the path to self-defense, but the path to self-destruction.